How are you? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to
Yes, sir.
with you and we are going to start next. Yesterday we talked about kinds of clauses and kinds of sentences. We read about compound sentences. In compound sentences, we have got two equivalent clauses, two independent clauses, and in complex sentences, we have got one independent clause and one or more than one dependent clauses or subordinate clauses. So then we talked about complement clause, and we read that complement clause comes at the place of noun phrase after the verb. It complements either the verb or the noun phrase. This is what we read yesterday. And then we also read that it can modify the verb, it can modify the noun. On the other hand, relative clause is also called adjectival clause. And in relative clause, it modifies only the noun phrase. And usually that noun is coming, usually not always, at the place of the subject. So our next topic today is adverbial clause. So can you see the book now? And we are going to start the adverbial clause.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I am going to start the adverbial clause. The name, any problem, any question about the previous lecture, the things that we studied yesterday? Do you have any problem, any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, I hope it's clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So our today's topic is about adverbial clauses. The name adverbial suggests that adverbial clauses modify verbs, but they modify the whole clause. They modify whole clauses as shown by the examples in 8. So remember the difference between adverbial clause and the complement clause is that complement clause can modify the noun phrase or the verb phrase. On the other hand, adverbial clause modifies the whole clause. It modifies the whole clause. So that is the difference between adverbial clause and the complement clause. Their other key property is that they are adjuncts. They are adjuncts since they are typically optional constituents in sentences. Since they are typically optional constituent in sentences, they are not necessary part of the sentence, but the optional constituent in sentences. They are traditionally classified according to their meaning. For example, adverbial clauses of reason, adverbial clauses of time, adverbial clauses of concession, adverbial clauses of manner or condition, as explained below, along with the example. Reason. Because Mehmuna loved Tariq, she refused to believe that he had deserted her. So, in fact, the sentence is she refused to believe that he had deserted her, but because is there and because is showing the reason, so the whole clause which is coming as a subordinate clause is modifying the whole clause, that is the she refused to believe that he had deserted her. So because Mehmuna loved Tariq, she refused to believe that he had deserted her. And the word which is coming before the clause, that is the word because, and it shows that this is a clause of reason. Then there is time, adverbial clause of time. When Fanny returned, she found Tom Bertram very ill. When Fanny returned. So now when, the word when, it is telling us that time clause is going to come, and the whole clause is called adverbial clause of time, and it is modifying the whole sentence. She found Tom very ill when Fanny returned. Then adverbial clause of concession. Although Mr. Darcy disliked Mrs. Bennet, although Mr. Darcy disliked Mrs. Bennet, so again this is an adverbial clause of concession. He married Elizabeth. He married Elizabeth. So it is modifying the whole sentence, that is, he married Elizabeth. Then adverbial clause of manner. Henry changed his plans as the mood took him. Henry changed his plans as the mood took him. So as the mood took him is an adverbial clause of manner, as the mood took him, and it is modifying the whole clause. Henry changed his plans. Then adverbial clause of condition. If Emma had left Hartfield, Mr. Woodhouse would have been unhappy. If Emma had left Hartfield, Mr. Woodhouse would have been unhappy. So here this is the adverbial clause of condition. So there are 5 kinds of adverbial clauses: reason, time, concession, manner, and condition. And the very first word which is coming in that clause is telling us about the behavior of that clause. For example, because is telling that this is an adverbial clause of reason. When is telling that this is an adverbial clause of time. Although is telling that this is an adverbial clause of concession. And as is telling that this is an adverbial clause of manner. And if is showing that there is a condition. The adverbial clause of reason in 8a, because Mehmuna loved Tariq, gives the reason, or the writer uses this to give the reason why Mehmuna refused to believe that Tariq had gone. It modifies the main clause. She refused to believe that she had deserted her. The adverbial clause of time in 8b, when Fanny returned, gives the time at which another event happened, namely her finding Tom ill. So when Fanny returned, so this is adverbial clause of time. When is telling us about the time. It modifies the main clause. She found Tom very ill. Is this clear? Any question?
Yes, sir.
Please revise it. I am here. You please revise. If you have any
No, sir, no question.
please reread again. Read again, okay? If there is any question, or if you read and you come across a problem, then I'm sitting here, okay, to take your question. So please, just 2-3 minutes, revise it. Should I move forward? Any
Yes,
question?
sir.
Okay. Adverbial clause of concession in 8c, although Mr. Darcy disliked Mrs. Bennet, conveys a concession. The writer says, as it were, okay, I concede, manta hu, that he did not like Mrs. Bennet. Nonetheless, he married Elizabeth. The adverbial clause of manner in 8a, as the mood took him, describes the manner in which Henry changed his plans and modifies the main clause, Henry changed his plans. In 8e, the adverbial clause of condition. The adverbial clause of condition, if Emma had left Hartfield, conveys the circumstances or conditions under which a particular situation would have arisen. The situation is Mr. Woodhouse being unhappy, and the writer declares that this situation did not actually come about but would have done. Emma's leaving. Hartfield would have brought it about. The crucial fact is the relationship between the two situations. Mr. Woodhouse being unhappy is conditional upon Emma's leaving Hartfield. The adverbial clause of condition modifies the main clause. Mr. Woodhouse would have been unhappy. Is this clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Our next topic is complementizers and subordinate conjunctions. So further explanation is coming, okay, about the kinds of subordinate clauses that we have read. So now you should remember or keep these points in mind. One important point remains to be made about subordinate clauses in English. Most of the subordinate clauses you will come across in written text are introduced by a special word. In 3, the complement clauses are introduced by that. In 7, the relative clauses are introduced by which, who, and that. And in 8, each type of adverbial clause has its particular initial word, like although, because, as, when, and if. Isn't it so? Whatever we have read, and now he is giving the explanation about them. Isn't it so?
Yes, sir.
Yes. In grammars from before, say 1965, the words introducing complement clauses and adverbial clauses were generally known as subordinating conjunctions. And words such as and but were known as coordinating conjunctions. Conjunctions are words that join clauses. Coordinating conjunctions join clauses that have the same status. In 2a, for example, the clause Captain Benwick married Lucia is of the same status as Captain Wentworth married Anne Elliot. And in 2a were split into its component clauses. Each clause on its own would immediately be able to constitute a sentence and to occur in a text. The clauses are of the same order or rank, hence coordinating conjunctions and coordinating clauses. In contrast, if 8e, say, were split into its component clauses, only one of them would be able to constitute a sentence, namely the main clause, Mr. Woodhouse would have been unhappy. He's right. अब वो ये बात कर रहा है कि सबऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस और कोऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस कहलाते थे ये सारे वर्ड्स, जैसा कि एंड, बट, सो, और ये सारे क्या हैं? कोऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस, क्योंकि इनके साथ जुड़े हुए दो क्लॉजेस दोनों के दोनों अपने कंप्लीट मीनिंग दे सकते हैं और दोनों के दोनों इंडिपेंडेंट सेंटेंसेस हो सकते हैं, जबकि एज, बिफोर, बिकॉज, इफ, when, इनके साथ जो जुमले स्टार्ट हो रहे हैं, they are subordinating conjunctions and they are subordinating clauses because they cannot stand alone. ये अपने complete meaning नहीं दे सकते, इनके लिए एक और साथ में इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज का होना जरूरी है. तो यही बात उसने यहां पर कही है. क्लियर?
Yes, sir.
Subordinating conjunctions introduce subordinate clauses. Since 1965 or so, the term complementizer has been used in one of the major theories of syntax, not just for subordinating conjunctions introducing complement clauses, but for all subordinating conjunctions. This usage has spread to other theories of syntax and to grammars of English and other languages, and we too adopt it. तो आजकल के दौर में जो है सबऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस और सबऑर्डिनेटिंग क्लॉजेस को कॉम्प्लीमेंटाइजर के नाम से याद किया जाता है. A problem is posed by the words that introduce relative clauses. Who, whom, and which are pronouns that also function as subordinating conjunctions. That they are pronouns is indicated by the who, whom distinction parallel to he, him, and so on, and the contrast between who and which parallel to the contrast between he, she, and it. The contrast between who and whom is disappearing from English these days. It is only used regularly in the most formal and carefully edited text. The WH words can be preceded by prepositions, as in the fire at which Mr. Woodhouse sat. The WH word still sometimes be referred to as relative pronouns and sometimes as complementizers. Relative clauses are also introduced by that. This word does not change in technical terms and cannot be preceded by a preposition. The fire at that. This is wrong. The fire at that नहीं हो सकता. The fire that Mr. Woodhouse sat. It is not a pronoun but merely a subordinating conjunction or complementizer. All the subordinating conjunctions in 8 are optional and can occur no matter what verb is in the main clause. For this reason, they are treated as adjuncts. The above list of adverbial clauses is not exhaustive but merely illustrative. Detailed accounts of subordinating ordinate clauses in English and other languages can be found in the references at the end of the book. यानी ये सारी एग्जॉस्टिव नहीं है, सारे के सारे उसने सबऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस और क्लॉजेस नहीं बताई हैं, चंद एक बताई हैं, सिर्फ 5 बताई हैं और बाकी की लिस्ट आपको रेफरेंस में मिलेगी एट द एंड ऑफ द बुक. To close this section, we return to conjoined clauses. Examples of conjoined clause, main clauses were given in 2, but subordinate clauses can also be conjoined as shown by the examples in 9. Example 9a contains 2 conditional clauses conjoined by and 9b contains 2 relative clauses conjoined by but. If Henry Crawford loved Fanny, अब this is subordinating conjunction. If Henry से लेकर loved Fanny तक, and if Fanny loved Edward, ये भी जो है subordinating है क्योंकि if आ रहा है. Henry Crawford was going to be disappointed. This is the main clause. दो subordinating है और एक main है. It was Annie Elliot who loved Captain Wentworth, but who rejected his first proposal. तो who loved captain और फिर who ये subordinating conjunctions हैं, लेकिन it was Anne Elliot, this is independent clause. So please revise this again. And if you have any question, complementizers and subordinating conjunctions. See, please पहले इसको पढ़ लें and then you can ask me questions. Take 5 minutes, okay? Go through this 6.4 again and then ask me questions.
जी sir.
Any question?
Yes, sir.
Anything which is not clear?
Sir, complementizers
So-
के बारे में sir.
उसने बताया है कि ये कॉम्प्लीमेंटाइजर होता है सबऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस जो पहले कहलाती थी, जिसमें एज, व्हेन, इफ, ऑल्दो, बिकॉज, क्योंकि इनसे जो जुमले स्टार्ट होते हैं वो सबऑर्डिनेट कंजंक्शंस ये वर्ड्स कहलाते हैं और वो क्लॉज सबऑर्डिनेटिंग क्लॉज कहलाती है. और आजकल के दौर में इन चीज़ों को कॉम्प्लीमेंटाइजर कहा जाता है. ये उसने ये बात की है यहाँ, ठीक है. फिर उसने कहा कि सबऑर्डिनेटिंग जो कंजंक्शंस होती हैं उसमें ऑल्दो, बिकॉज, एज, व्हेन और इफ शामिल हैं और भी बहुत सारे वर्ड्स हैं, क्योंकि उनके बाद जो भी क्लॉज आएगी वो सबऑर्डिनेट ही होगी, वो खुद से अपने पूरे मीनिंग नहीं दे सकती. जबकि एंड, बट, सो और ये जो 4 कंजंक्शंस हैं ये कोऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस कहलाती हैं, क्योंकि इनके दोनों तरफ जो जुमले हैं वो इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज हैं, खुद से अपने मीनिंग दे सकते हैं. तो पुराने दौर में इनको सबऑर्डिनेटिंग और कोऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस कहते थे, जबकि 1965 के बाद से इनको सिंटेक्स की किताबों के अंदर कॉम्प्लीमेंटाइजर्स कहा जाता है. ये उसने यहाँ पर एक्सप्लेन किया. और कोई बात जो समझ में नहीं आ रही?
Sir 9B को भी थोड़ा सा explain कर दे, example जो है.
9b में उसने ये बताया है कि देखें, एक जुमले के अंदर एक मेन क्लॉज होगी और एक या एक से ज्यादा सब ऑर्डिनेट क्लॉजेज होंगी. इसी तरह से एक जुमले के अंदर एक मेन क्लॉज होगी और एक या एक से ज्यादा जो हैं वो सबऑर्डिनेट. जबकि जो कंपाउंड सेंटेंस है जिसमें 9b की एग्जांपल दी गई है, इसमें दोनों जो हैं वो इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉजेज हैं, लेकिन उनको फर्दर एक्सप्लेन किया गया है हु की मदद से, जो कि रिलेटिव क्लॉज को शो करता है. और जब हु हम लगा के रिलेटिव क्लॉज की तरफ हम बढ़ते हैं तो वो भी सब ऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज हो जाता है. तो इट वॉज एन एलियट हु लव्ड कैप्टन, तो यहाँ पे हु किसके लिए आया, एलियट के लिए आया, बट हु रिजेक्टेड हिज फर्स्ट प्रपोजल, और ये फिर कैप्टन के लिए दोबारा हुआ है, दूसरे कैप्टन वेंटवर्थ को, जबकि इसने उसकी पहले प्रपोजल को झुटला दिया था, टर्न डाउन कर दिया था। तो ये दोनों जुमले जो हैं असल में वो बता रहे हैं कि इसके अंदर एक मेन क्लॉज है और बाकी जो हैं वो सब ऑर्डिनेट क्लॉजेज हैं। जैसे इफ हेनरी क्रॉवर्ड लव्ड फैनी, ये सब ऑर्डिनेट है, एंड इफ फैनी लव्ड एडवर्ड, ये भी सब ऑर्डिनेट है। हेनरी was going to be disappointed, ये जो है इंडिपेंडेंट क्लॉज है। इट वॉज एन एलियट, ये इंडिपेंडेंट है, बाकी इसमें दोनों जो क्लॉजेज हैं वो सब ऑर्डिनेट क्लॉजेज हैं। और कोई बात उसने नहीं की है, उसने ये बताया है कि जो कंजंक्शंस हैं, सब ऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस और कोऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस, इनको कॉम्प्लीमेंटाइजर्स कहते हैं। और आजकल के दौर में 1965 के बाद से ये जो आपके सब ऑर्डिनेटिंग कंजंक्शंस हैं और इनके बाद जो क्लॉजेज आ रही हैं, उन सबको सबऑर्डिनेट क्लॉज के बजाय कॉम्प्लीमेंटाइजर कहते हैं। ये बात उसने की। जी, एनी प्रॉब्लम?